Hi everybody, today I'm helping an organization called Connecting for Good. They're a nonprofit entity. They have their 501c3, and I'm going to just help them set up a clonezilla server. And I'm just going to go through a few of the basic steps that I've learned this past couple of weeks, and I'm using VirtualBox right now, and I think this is a good platform to get just a general copy of Windows 7 ready to deploy to computers. With clonezilla, we'll be using the boot on LAN option on most computers, and then we'll be able to deploy this image up to 20-30 computers, depending on how big the LAN is, or maybe your particular LAN. And so one of the very first steps I'm going to do, or I have done already, is basically just install a version of Windows. This is a 32-bit version. I went ahead and just used some apps that they like to send out with their Windows. I've ran all the Windows updates. There is no more updates. So when this computer gets deployed on a system, it will automatically be up to date. And as you can see, there's no more updates. The important updates are non-critical vulnerabilities. The optional updates are for just extra stuff that they send you, and the important updates are for like 0-day vulnerabilities and stuff like that come out on the third Tuesday of every month. Basically, like I said, I'm just giving a general overview of what I've done, and pretty basic. And so what I like to do on this particular version of Windows is going to go on a lot of older hardware, typically a P4 with gig of RAM or an equivalent. I like to turn all the effects off, and so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just go and show you how I do that. Go into Control Panel, and then Advanced System Settings, and then you're going to go to Performance, and then what this will affect is all the special effects, the movement, and basically all the bells and whistles, and we'll say adjust for best performances, and you'll see when I hit apply, it dramatically affects the screen. Everything looks kind of blotchy, kind of almost like a Windows 8, but that really does help the system. It takes a lot of the stress off the CPU from just rendering extra stuff, and it really optimizes it for an old system. So I like that. It works. If for whatever reason you don't, you can always go back to the Control Panel, go to the systems, and hit, go back to the Advanced System Settings, go to Performance, and then click it. But it really does help an older computer, and just takes a little bit of the stress off the CPU, and every little bit helps. So basically the first step is to run a tool called sysprep, and this is a tool that's created by Microsoft, and what it does is just takes a lot of the stuff out and lets it get ready to be prepared to be cloned, and you can read exactly what it does. There's a lot of documentation out there. I won't go into the specifics, but I'll just say what the tool essentially does is it lets the computer get cloned, and it sets it up in a state where you'll be able to reproduce it. And I'll show you, and kind of when I get done sysprepping it, I'll restart it again, and I'll just show you. So basically, I am in the Windows folder. In the Windows folder, then we're going to go into the System 32 folder, and we're gonna scroll down here to sysprep. And there's a few ways you can run it. You can run it in audit mode. but for this particular application, we're just doing it out of the box, and that'll do like a quick setup. It'll ask when you get done and you clone it, it'll ask for a person's name and your product key. So you really technically you could run sysprep and clone it to a different computer that has a 32-bit processor, and put your name and your product key in out the door. So for this particular application, that's what we're going to do. I don't want it to reboot. I want it to shut down. So when I clone it, it'll be at a state where I'll turn it on and it won't restart. So in this particular application, I want to shut it down, and when I start it up, it's going to be with the cloning software. So that's what I wanted to do. You could just hit quit and do some other stuff, but generally shut down I think is going to be the best option for me. I'm going to run the sysprep utility. It's going to take a second when the utility starts, and I'll actually probably pause the video because it'll be 3 or 4 minutes, and I'm sure that's something you don't necessarily want to watch. So I'm just going to make sure that the sysprep tool is running. Let's see here. Okay, there we go. And like I said, what it does is it goes through and it just prepares the OS to be cloned. I mean, it does some other stuff that's kind of neat. And like I said, you can just Google sysprep, and you'll be able to bring that up and read more about that. But for today's demonstration, it's just basically going to get it to be cloned, and so what it's doing now is shutting down. It's sysprepped, and I really like being able to run this in VirtualBox because it's clean, no viruses, and just a few other limitations about sysprep is you can't, you can only do sysprep 3 times in a row, and basically after you've done sysprep 3 times in a row, you have to reinstall Windows again. You have to basically start from scratch. And I think you can reset the activation timer, which is 30 days, like twice. Those are the limitations. When you run sysprep 2, if you have like your product activation key, if you put that in, it will take that out. So it is pretty much like installing a fresh version of Windows, but you are essentially your apps and stuff like that should still pretty much be there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start the clonezilla server, and so I'm just going to go in here to the settings, and we're going to pick an ISO. I had a dedicated clonezilla server. I used a version of Ubuntu, and then I installed clonezilla on top of that, but my hard drive got corrupted, and so today I'm just going to use a live distro of clonezilla server, and basically I like using that because it's quick and easy. Everything's pre-configured. There are videos on how to set up a clonezilla server, and what that is going to let you do is with the dedicated distro you can access the drive, and it's just a little easier. But this is just as simple. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually start the clonezilla server, and I'm going to go and actually boot the distro, and I'm actually going to when I start this up, I'm going to start a boot on LAN server up, known as a PXE boot, I believe it's called. And you could do it a couple different ways. You could just use the normal version of clonezilla, and you could back up to a USB drive, a flash drive, a network share, a Symba share if you're running Linux, or if you have a NAS, that would also work. But I want to use this because I'm going to be deploying this particular software on a LAN, and so in this particular application, I think this is going to be the best instance. English, of course, is what I've always picked, and most of it you're not really going to mess with it. You're just going to pretty much pick the defaults on everything. So like I said, you know, what my application is not necessarily going to be the way you're going to do it, but this is a pretty good general overview. You've got two options, and basically you want to pick the first option, and the other one is basically a disk to disk transfer. Like if you're copying two hard drives. This is if you're copying a hard drive to a particular network, or I mean copying if you want to image a hard drive to and then create another image, and then so when you save it, it'll be an image file, and this is actually you're pushing it's a hard drive to hard drive transfer. And I think I've actually started the wrong one up. I started the clonezilla Live, not the clonezilla Server Edition, so I'm just going to go back in here and yeah, I sure did. I'm going to go back in here and click the right ISO, and so yeah, clonezilla Live Server. And but there are a couple ones. There's like the i486, the i686, and then there's another one for a 64-bit processor. Basically, if you want to just maintain compatibility, the i486 will work. The i686 will be like pretty much a Pentium M or like a P4, most P3s, and so that'll work on most stuff. But I just picked the i486 because it's going to be about the same. There's not going to be much difference on speed, and it's just going to give me the most compatibility. So I just pick it, and it doesn't really matter. I mean, the i686 or the i486 will work on most systems, but for today's purpose, I'm just using the i486 because like I said, it will. There's probably no computer that it won't clone. So I'm just going to go ahead and start up the live distro here. But the main differences between the two distros is the clonezilla server will let you deploy the image to multiple computers. Like if you want to do the boot on LAN, and the clonezilla Live is basically just for computer to computer. So you could make an image and just carry a flash drive or whatever and re-image the systems locally on just the different systems. But like I said, here I'm going to be using clonezilla server. We're going to be using it on LAN. Sorry about that. I got to talking and I realized I loaded the same ISO twice, and so I just paused it to make sure I had the right ISO to load the server. I kept loading just the normal clonezilla version. Like I said, you know, that's the difference between the two. Is, you know, just the normal clonezilla is just pretty much for workstation to workstation. Clonezilla Live server will let you deploy it over a LAN for multiple computers using the boot on LAN. I think the protocol is the PBX. Yeah, PBX booting, and that's used in a that's pretty standard. Most computers can boot from the network. You know, we're not going to be running from terminal. We're going to be doing like the X Windows, which is this is a live distro, and the DRLB stands for diskless remote boot Linux, I believe. But this particular one, like it's going to default to the GUI, and that's what we'll use. So it's going to start up here, and I'll basically just run through the configurations that I use. Here you can use like gparted if you want to for whatever reason, you can see I've got just a drive. It's just a 50 gig drive I've made with a VirtualBox, and I've just formatted it as an NTSF, so that way if I ever want to mount it in Windows or whatever, I could read it, but it doesn't really matter. I mean, you can use a Linux partition or whatever. I normally will most likely be using a dedicated install of like Ubuntu with the clonezilla server sitting on top of it. This is just what it came with. And this is nice because if you don't have a dedicated system to clone on, then you can just throw this in there and put it on a flash drive or a DVD and just instantly have a cloning server. And that's nice because if you don't want to have a dedicated system, you can just go ahead and use this. And I'll kind of just briefly describe what we're seeing here, and and just try to go over the options real quick. And so basically what this is asking is, do you want to lease an IP address to the boot client only? Yes, because you do. If you do not do that, then it will let's see. So basically the way this should work is, if I had two networking cards, I would have one hooked to a switch and the other one hooked to where the gateway that did my DHCP. So this would the secondary NIC or the first NIC, whatever you configured it, would do DHCP to any computers that were booting with the PBX protocol. So like if you went into the BIOS and you said boot from LAN, it would broadcast this. But this is going to the way this is set up, it's just going to broadcast it to whatever it's hooked to. So like if I hook this into a switch, it would be broadcasting that all over my whole network. And the bad thing is if you, for some reason, somebody does that, they could accidentally reimage their system. So what's nice about using two network cards is you could have one, that would still let the computer get on the internet, and the other ones would only pick up like on the second NIC, it would only pick up the signal, because this would act as a gateway, and it would do DHCP to anything that was only hooked to the second NIC. But with this way, what the message is saying is it's going to broadcast to the whole network. So in this particular application, I don't care. So I'm going to go ahead and say yes, broadcast the PBX boot to all the different computers on the network. So you might want to be aware of that. If you do that, it's probably good to have two NIC cards. Have your first one be just hooked to your DHCP, and then the second one, like if you're going to clone a workstation or whatever, have them all run through the second NIC. If you want to permanently set up a boot clonezilla server, but it doesn't really matter. With live distro, you can pretty much stop and start it. So that's the option we're going to go with. I hope I was clear on that. Please forgive me if I'm not, if there's nothing on my terminologies, but I do try my best. And so we could, from here, we could say, hey, we want to back up to a Symba share or a shared drive. You can send the image or receive the image from that. This option is, we're going to back up to a local drive, a hard drive that's attached to the system, a flash drive. This is, like I said, for NAS, Symba share, or like a Windows share. We're not going to do that. We're just going to use the VirtualBox hard drive today, just for the sake of simplicity. And then it's saying if you've got any USB hard drives, now is the time to hook them up, because it will go and try to mount that here at this point. That's what it's saying. And it's just looking for any mounted USB hard drives. If we had other hard drives, it would be listed here. This is saying we've got a 51 gig NTFS, which is Windows-based partition in VirtualBox, and that's what we want to store that's what we want to use for sending or receiving the images. Like if we've already cloned a system, it'll be stored here, or if we're going to make an image. This is the local hard drive it's going to be stored on. And it's just showing, here it's just showing the directory of, the hard drive, basically. Now, it's just setting up everything, all of the boot on LAN packages, and it's going to start DHCP up, and that is only for a computer requesting to boot from PBX. I mean, it's not going to do, your DHCP server is still going to handle that, but this will answer any computer that is trying to boot with the PBX protocol. Then it will answer it. But like I said, you can use 2 NIC cards and you can separate that, or you can just use 1 NIC card and it will broadcast through the whole network. This by default is set for 100 computers. The thing about the live distro is it's running from memory. So even if you have a pretty beefy computer, it's hard to say. You probably could do 20 or 30 clients with it, but you probably, if you're going to use it all the time, you're probably better off using a distro of Linux and then installing it as a dedicated install. And so here you can, what this is asking is you can if you do want to use 1 network card and you broadcast the PBX system, you can actually go and make a config file, and you can basically just list the MAC addresses. So if you're trying to clone a system and it has the MAC address in there, then it will you can blacklist it or whitelist it depending on what you want. You can do it by the IP address or MAC address. If like I wanted to clone a computer and then I've already cloned it, you can put a MAC address in there, and then when you try to clone it again, it'll say, hey, this one's already been cloned, or pretty much like that. It's just a whitelist or a blacklist of MAC addresses. This we want to do all clients. This is just, like I said, a live distro, and that's all we really care about. We just care about cloning whatever computer that's willing to answer on the network, the PBX boot protocol, and that's probably what we'll do for the sake of simplicity. You won't really use the expert mode. Like if you want to clone, if you clone a big hard drive and you want to clone it to a smaller one, there's a couple options you can do to override it, and so it'll go ahead and push it to the drive, and there's some other stuff, but for the most part, we'll be using the beginner's mode. And so here you have, save disk is pretty much you're going to want to save the entire partition. You're going to want to save the entire partition, so if you have 3 partitions on there, it's going to save everything. This is basically you want to just clone a couple partitions, like 1 partition for whatever reason. This is restore, restored entire partition, and this is only to restore, selected partitions on the disk. This is basically once you boot from the PBX on the other system, you can choose from the other end what you want to do. But for today, we want to go ahead and just save the image we want to go ahead and image the other windows, the VirtualBox that we just did. So we're going to go ahead and hit save the disk, and I'm going to pick save the entire partition. With Windows, you have 2 partitions. You have, like, generally it's like 100 megabyte partition, and then you'll actually have your, the rest of your partitions. That's the way Windows is set up, primarily on Windows 7 and Windows 8. So I'm going to click that. You can do it at the other end when you boot from the workstation, or this will let you just generate the name now. So for the sake of simplicity, I just want to run it on the other end, and I'm going to do everything from here. So save in server, and we're going to call this image, the place is CFG, so we're going to call it CFGX, CFG 32 Win 7. So we'll call it that, and it actually creates a directory, and so we're actually naming a directory, and then the files will the files will set inside the directory. So that's actually what we're making here is a directory name, and this is just saying we want to save the first hard drive. It would be like SDA1, SDA2, etc. I believe Linux calls it. It'd be like SDA1 for the first hard drive, SDA2 for the second. I believe that's the term. I'm mostly familiar with Windows, so I'm still relatively new to the Linux world. So we're gonna hit OK. But that's basically that right there. I know means the first hard drive. And so we're gonna hit an OK. It doesn't. If we were backing up to a computer that maybe had bad sectors or something like that, then you might want to check it. But I don't think it's really necessary to try to check it, because we know the image is good. I just made it, so there shouldn't be any problems. So I'm not really worried about it. I mean, if there's something wrong, we'll reimage the system. So I have just been going with no, and based on all the videos I've seen, that's pretty much what everybody says to do. But like I said, you'll have to read up on the documentation, and it'll be a case by case basis. And then this is asking is when the client boots over the network, what do you want it to do? Do you want it to reboot, power off, or do you want to let the client choose on the other side? I'm just going to say power off. It really doesn't matter. That way you've made all the settings on this side, so it's more or less seamless. If somebody else is running the server and they don't have to or somebody else is running on a workstation and they're cloning or restoring, so they just don't have to sit there and make as many choices. It's more automated. So I'm just going to say power off. And it's my understanding this is basically if you don't increase that number and you have a large partition, then it will split the file up. So basically, if I want to say 10 meg, as soon as it went over the 10 mega mark, and you were backing it up, it would split the file up a bunch of different ways. So I don't think when it images the system, it uses some compression, so it's not like, hey, I imaged a 30 gig hard drive and it's 30 gigabytes. I mean, unless you really have 30 gigabytes of information on there. This particular case, the hard drive is like, the VirtualBox hard drive is like 30 gig, and only like 15 gig is like being used of that 30, and so it'll probably go down. I think it's probably like 6.5, 7 gig. So it compresses the image pretty well. So you'll be able to fit this on like a dual layer DVD or like an 8 gig flash drive, if you wanted to do it that way. So we're going to hit OK, and basically what it's going to start doing now is I believe it's going to start broadcasting DHCP, and so we're good here. And so basically it says you're now ready to boot from the PBX. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start the other instance of Windows up. and I'm going to go ahead and tell it to that I want the computer not to boot from the hard drive. I want it to boot from the networking card. So I'm going to go ahead and move it up in the boot order, and then we're going to go ahead and start our version of Windows. Except it will not boot into Windows. It will go ahead and answer the PBX call. And so basically here is what we're looking at is it's if this was another computer on the network, it would, and we set it to boot from the network, then it would use the PBX protocol. And basically, if I told it to, like here, if I had image of the system already, I could say, you know, and this is set up to save the image, but I could deploy the image here. So if I was restoring a computer and I was at a workstation, I could just hit enter, and it would go ahead and start deploying the image. This time it's saving the image. So we're on a LAN. You got your computer hooked to the switch. You've got the, and you're booting off the PBX protocol. It's really good to be able to do this, and I think it's handy. So we're going to go ahead and start it, and this is using the PBX, and we're booting. We're going to go ahead and save the image to the virtual hard drive. And again, I had a Ubuntu with clonezilla server sitting on top of that, but my hard drive started to go bad, and it started to do bad things, so I just went ahead and, just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to use this. And I think that's what most people are going to use, because they don't want to have a dedicated workstation to clone stuff, and you can just stick the CD in and stuff, and it'll work pretty much. It's not really resource intensive. And I've used this on several occasions, and I really like it, and it's fast. It's not. This is the 100 meg partition that Windows sets up, and now it's going to move on to the other main partition that's going to back up, and it's going to take just a minute. And I'll probably pause the video. It says it's going to take 6 minutes, so there's no point in sitting here watching it back up. And I'll start just before it goes again. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna pause the video while it goes. It'll be about 6.5 minutes. Like I said, it's compressing, right around 15 gigs. So that's really not too bad. And so, like I said, the final image is gonna be 6.5, 7 gig. So we're gonna pause the video and we'll be right back. So we're gonna start the video back up here. It's just got about 15 or 16 seconds, and basically the only thing you're gonna see is just gonna end the process, and pretty much shut the cloning process down. It just says it's successful, and then what we'll do at the end of this, it will wait like 15 seconds. It'll just let the clonezilla server know that, hey, the client or workstation got successfully cloned, and it's just going to notify the server that the job's done. And then here in the other window, you'll see such and such client has been successful, and how the time it took, and how like how big the image is and everything else. So we're pretty much done with that. So from here you can do a few things. You can actually start the clonezilla server back up, and then if you wanted to go and you want to actually go and you want to restore the image, you could click that, and you'd instead of backing up, you'd be restoring the image. So we're going to do something slightly different here. I'm actually going to be done with this particular distro for now. We're going to come back to it shortly. Right now, basically, what I want to do is we're not always going to be where we could restore the computer from the network. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to make an ISO for local recovery. So they need to go someplace else and restore the computer, and they don't have access to the LAN to boot from to restore the image. We're going to make, like, they could use a hard drive, a USB hard drive, or a USB flash drive, or a dual layer DVD. So I'm going to go actually use the one I kept trying to boot from earlier. We're actually going to use just the standard clonezilla Live distro, and it's pretty much the same thing, except it's just for a local one. The first thing I'm going to need to do is that particular version, that particular distro is pretty crippled. It doesn't mount the drives and everything. Since we're running in VirtualBox, it's not seamless. I would have to, like, get an OS and then put the virtual hard drive and mount it as a second one. This is just a nice, quick, simple fix. I'm going to use a Ubuntu, just a live distro to boot in there, and so I can actually go and do that. Sorry about that. Had a little interruption. No, I jumped the gun. We're going to use the live distro, just the normal clonezilla ISO, and we're going to boot off that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that to create an ISO. So I will start the clonezilla server, or I mean the clonezilla live distro, and then what I will do is I will go and there's this option here to take the image that you generated, and then you can go ahead and turn that into an ISO. So we're going to use the standard clonezilla distro, live distro, to generate an ISO from the image that we just captured from the Windows 7 VirtualBox. So I'm booting that up, and it'll take just a second. And I'll try to go through this real quick and just go through some of the options that you could use. It's really a lot like the clonezilla server. Only it's really meant to just you can use it on for, like, when you're physically at the computer instead of trying to boot through the network. It's really the same software. Most of it's all the same, except here you won't have, like, the Debian. I believe that's how it's pronounced. You won't boot into that. You'll just boot into the Linux diskless remote software. And so we actually want to start the clonezilla software. Again, this first one would be like if you're doing, you want to go ahead and use images. This would be like for if you actually want to hook two hard drives together and hook them up. We've made an image already, and so that's what we want to work with. And so we're not going to do it from a share or anything like that. We're actually going to go, this is a virtual local hard drive, believe it or not. And then it's searching for the USB drive devices. Again, we're going to use our virtual hard drive. It's 51 gigs. It's an NTFS partition. We'll just go to beginner mode, and then here we actually want to create a clonezilla live ISO, and then I've got an image that I made earlier for cloning Ubuntu. We're gonna use the image that I just made on the Windows 7 32-bit, and what this is going to do, and I'll tell you, the SDA, I think, stands for just had to look it up here. So the CSI is basically a SATA, and then you have the DEV, which is pretty much IDE, and then so it'll say like SAD slash HDA1 for the first partition and the second partition. So I just wanted to basically get some clarification on that. The SDA is for the serial ATA, and then the IDE will basically say like anyway, yeah, it's kind of confusing, and Windows calls it one thing and then Linux calls another, but I think SBA is just for a local drive, and then like your second hard drive will be like HDB2 or something like that. You could always look it up for more reference, but basically we're saying that it's going to be stored to the hard drive, and we've already selected the image. So we're going to go ahead and go with that. English, yeah, standard for the keyboard map, and we've already selected the ISO, and I guess what that was asking for is where do we want to save the image once it's generated, and we're going to say both. It'll do a zip file for a flash drive or for a ISO for a DVD, CD, is 700 megs or under, and then a DVD is single layer is 4.6 or 8.4 if you're a dual layer. If you need a dual layer, so we're gonna hit both, and it's gonna put them in home / part imag. I guess that's how that's pronounced. And this is saying that it's just it's too large to fit on a single layer disk. It's going to be right at 6 gigs. So we're going to break that barrier of 4.6 gigs. So you will need like for this instance, if I'm going to do a DVD, I will need a dual layer one. And they're relatively cheap. So yes, I wanna continue. Well, I guess it's saying for the image, and this is actually generating the ISO. We just want to say yes on both of them. But yeah, I'm still trying to learn the all the Linux terminology. So SBA, and then you've got that. And then you've got the third number supposed to be like the partition, and then you have like HDD 1, 2, and 3 depending on what the hard drive in, and I think SDA can be like a flash drive or anything that just falls in that category, and then like HDD 1 is your first hard drive, HDD 2 is your second hard drive. It's kind of confusing, and I'm still in a learning process. As you can tell, I sometimes use terminology that may not make sense to everybody, but it does me, and that's still part of a learning process. And I'll eventually get it down, and I'll know what SDA versus HDD1 is right off the bat without having to look it up all the time. This is going to take a second. It's just making the ISO, so I'll pause it and I'll be back. All right, we're just about done, and I do once again apologize about my terminology. I've done this several times, but it's when I've been working with Windows and DOS for like 20 years, so the Linux terminology is not yet ingrained in me, and I'm sure with time it will. But I want to call it C drive and D drive partition and things like that, and that's not really applicable to Linux. So again, we've made the boot images, and it's still generating. It'll take just a few more seconds, and if it takes longer than that, I'll go ahead and pause it until it's completed. But I just kind of wanted to give everybody watching this a general overview of how, kind of what the basic process is. There are lots of good videos out there. I think mine is probably just rather more of an amateur approach, but I just kind of wanted to give people an idea of how to do this, and I think it's a good thing to do, to set it up in VirtualBox, because you can do it in a clean environment, and you're able to use VirtualBox, have an instance of Windows, or whatever else you want to run, and then clone pretty seamlessly between the two, and then use the VirtualBox you can use VirtualBox and run clonezilla, the live edition, or a dedicated install of it, and then broadcast throughout the network. And you can do all this with one machine, and build your ISOs as you need them, or your instances of Windows as you need them, and update them, and tailor them to for whatever computer you're going to use. In this particular application, we're just making a generic, just in a generic version, and we're going to they've got a refurbisher license, so we can clone them to many different computers, and then with luck, push the image to it, register to the person, and then out the door it goes. There could be hardware failure and lots of other things that might go wrong, but ideally that's the plan. So we're going to make this up, and it looks like it's going to take a few more, a minute or two more, so I'm going to go ahead and pause it and just wait till it's done. Okay, it finally finished. So basically just went through and created the ISO, and it's asking me now what exactly I want to do. Do I want to power off or stay in console? I'm just going to go back to the console, and I'm pretty much done here. I've generated the ISO, and I guess you can put a zip file on there and set it up to boot from a flash drive. I generally just use the ISO and use the utility to put the ISO onto a USB drive. I haven't really looked into the zip file too much. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and since that live version doesn't really have all it's got is terminal, I'm going to switch to a live distro that will let me move the files that I just made. Had this have been an actual dedicated Linux box, I could actually use some kind of GUI to do it, but I don't have any way to mount the virtual hard drive, so I'm going to just use Ubuntu and boot into that, and then that way I can actually access the hard drive. Again, I did have a dedicated install of Ubuntu with the clonezilla server running on top of it, but my hard drive started going bad, and I had sectors go bad, and I guess the image was sitting on the bad sector, so the image just wasn't any good anymore. I wasn't going to try to rebuild it, so this live distro, I've used it before, and it works pretty well for all intents and purposes. So I'm just gonna mount it. I'm just gonna go into this and mount the drive, and then I could hook it up to an external hard drive, or in this particular instance I have a drive share in Windows, and I'm just gonna push the image over to the drive share, and that way I can burn it to an ISO, or just back up with it, whatever I want to do. Then I will probably go ahead and use VirtualBox and create another, just a temporary instance of Windows, and just start the clonezilla server up, and just kind of show you how I restore the image, and I will use the same process. I'll use the PBX boot on LAN, but I will be restoring the image instead of backing it up. And so, for instance, if I had other computers hooked to my network right now, I could start the clonezilla server up, and then go ahead and if I needed to clone 20 computers, as fast as I could push the images to them, and that's how I would restore it. So, so I'm just gonna pause the video and wait till the live distro finish booting, because it'll be a second. I wanted to go ahead and just capture this part here real quick, and I'm gonna make while this is loading, I'm gonna go ahead and make another empty hard drive, and I'm gonna this is what I'm gonna push the image to. So we're gonna call it like Win7 temp. And so an important thing to note here is like the image that I clone from will be I clone from a 30 gig hard drive, and so for instance that nobody's going to have a 30 gig hard drive. Most of them are going to be like 40 gigs, 100 gig. So I'm actually going to make a bigger hard drive in this case. So I'll be pushing a 30 gig cloned partition to it, but the drive will be bigger, and I will go and I'll, let's say this is an 80 gig drive, and so I'll create that, and actually I'll clone it, and then I'll have to go into the partition utility, and I will have to make the drive bigger when I clone it. So I just wanted to show you that my it came off of like a 30 gig image, and I'm gonna clone it, and so it'll be bigger. You can use clonezilla to clone like from like if you have a 80 gig and then you want to clone to a 30 gig, as long as you don't have like it's 25 gig, you can do that. And like there's an option, and like that's where you'd use the advanced restore instead of the basic one. My instances of Ubuntu on the live distro is getting ready to start, and if it takes too long to load, I will I'll just stop the video, but it shouldn't take too very long to do that. And like I said, all I'm using this for is just because I'll mount the drive, and I'll copy it over from the network share, and this distro just lets me mount the drive, and I've had pretty good luck with that. My distro of choice has been Ubuntu, but for the purposes of this video, we're just going to do it. So here it lets me shows everything. This is my NTFS 60 gig partition, and all it has is just showing like the images and the ISOs that we've made. So like that's just the actual image. That's the stock image that clonezilla makes, and then it kind of puts these other ones in here. This is the Ubuntu. I actually don't use it anymore, so I'm actually just gonna, while I'm on here, I think I have to run a sudo command to delete these, because by default the GUI doesn't let me do that, so I'll worry about that later. For right now, I'm just going to concentrate on copying these over to my network share. So if I can get the folder to open, let's see, browse network. Yeah, okay, there we go, wired. and it gets a little finicky, especially on the live distros. That's why it's better to do like a dedicated share. I mean, a dedicated install. It's being a little finicky. I'll sit here and play with it until I can get the network share open. So I'll just pause it until it wants to. Maybe the OS is still loading. Hang on just a second. There we go. I had to reboot the live distro. It's always a little finicky when you're trying to do access the network on a live distro. Of course, it always has been with me. I'm sure there's a trick or to get it done, but you just gotta, you're using a live distro that's running in memory in a virtual environment, so it's not the most stable thing. And like I said, if you're going to be doing this a lot, you're probably better off to install, get a dedicated machine or run. If you're going to do VirtualBox, which is great, still have a live distro, Debian, whatever distro you want to use, and then install clonezilla on top of that. It's probably going to be more stable. Then you can use the VirtualBox tools to, you can just drag and drop the images from the two windows onto your desktop, or whatever. You just they call it the guest the guest edition. And once you run that, you can mount the drives easier, and it's just cut and paste, and it's just better, I think. But like I said, my hard drive had bad sectors on it, so I needed to get it done. So this is what I went with, and it works pretty well, for the most part. It's like I said, it's a little buggy. Did I close it? Let's see. Back up, open a new window. Oh, there it is. And let's see here. And this is on my desktop. Temp folder, and let's see here. Go back to the NTFS drive, and the two we're looking for that we were created are the clonezilla, the ISO, and the zip file. The zip file I haven't used too much yet. I've had pretty good luck with the ISO, and you can actually use a program to do that on a USB flash drive too. The zip file I have not used that yet, but I will. This is copying through my network share. It's going to take a few minutes. If I had the guest services tools, it would just be faster. But since I don't, it's not going to take 2 hours. It'll probably take about 20 minutes. So I'm going to pause this, and I will be back. Okay, so we transferred the file. It took a while. Like I said, if you have a dedicated install and the guest services, it goes faster. There could be some setting to speed it up, but like I said, you're booting up off of an ISO in a virtual environment, so it works. And so I transferred the ISO onto my Windows shared partition, and I'll pull it up real quick, and so I've got the ISO. Let's see here. Refresh. Here it is, and like I say, gonna need a dual layer DVD on that, because that's over the what is it, 4.2 or 4.3 single layer DVD, so you'll need a dual layer, or like I said, an 8 gig flash drive. But still, that's pretty good, because you've got it's a 30 gig partition with actually 15 gigs of data, so that's compressed, 15, that compressed down quite nicely. That's just right at 6 gigs. So all in all, that's not too bad. I'm not going to do anything with that right now, but that's nice, because you can deploy that if you're not going to boot from the network and push the image through the network. So what I've done is I've created another this is going to be another instances of Windows, and I'm gonna clone from the clonezilla live server to this. And so when you do this, you want to make sure your network adapter, because this will be on a different subnet, and what it boots up to, I'm not exactly sure. It's a different subnet. It's within its own dedicated network. But when you do a bridge adapter, it acts like a bridge to your wireless your actual, like a wireless bridge. I'll see if I can pause it and bring a picture up, because it gives a good example of it in just a second. This is for VMware, but it creates a VLAN, and it creates a wireless bridge from the virtual adapter to your network, and that way it's actually doing DHCP from my actual DHCP server, in case this is an actual just a modem / router combo, but it's getting DHCP from that. So that's what you want to use to be able to use the PBX protocol. It'll broadcast it on your network via the virtual bridge. And if you don't have it, then it's using like NAT for its different, like it's creating a whole thick network. But the virtual network hooks it into your network, and that's the setting you want for whatever that's worth. And then so we're going to go ahead and start the clonezilla server up. I will go here and make sure that I click the live server up, and we'll start that up. I'll probably just go ahead and skip past that to where we can start, and I'll show you what mode to do to push the image out. You've seen this start before, so I'll probably just skip right to that part. Alright, we're back on the live distro of clonezilla, and I'm gonna start the server up. Again, it's asking, do I want to have two network adapters to separate my network that I'm going to clone, or my little maybe run a switch on the second NIC card, and all those computers would just receive the DHCP, the PBX boot on LAN protocol, and the other computers won't. That way I can still run the server and have internet access, and it acts as NAT in between that. So if you actually, for whatever reason, needed to get on the internet, it acts as NAT, but you don't really need that, because like I said, you're just cloning, and there's some other stuff you can load through this PBX server, like if you're running a thin client, and you could start up an instance of whatever OS, and it's just NAT is built in there, because like I said, this is acting as a DHPC server too, for boot on LAN only. So it on the other one, like, you can specify how many IP addresses you want to set aside, and like you can do 1 or up to 100. This is just set at 100. But this I did want to kind of go over, like, for example, if I did have a NAS and I used the local one to send an image to it, I could connect here to my Simba share or NAS, in this case my Windows partition, my Windows share, and I could enter my stuff in and my password, and then it would pull the image from my network share. If you had a NAS, a free NAS box or something, you could punch your path in there and then pull it up. I'm just going to use the virtual hard drive, but like I said, if you did want to pull it from a network attached storage or something, that is nice. You can do that. So if I wanted to, I could go in here and hook it up and put my network share in and pull it from my network share. But for all intents and purposes, we're just going to pull it from the hard drive because it's just simple. It just works. Again, it's going to look for USB devices, flash drives, USB hard drives. We're just pulling it straight off the hard drive. And that's just a picture of what the file system is. Now it's going to run the configuring. It's running the config file for the server. So that's going to start up just a second. And then right now it's creating the image that it's going to boot off of. Then it's now it's starting the DHCP up. So yeah, it's scripted for 100 IP addresses, and quite honestly, I don't know if this live distro just running from RAM, how well it would do with that. I've read that somebody's done up to 30 computers with it, but I think if you're really going to do like 100 computers at once, you want a pretty hefty computer with a lot of RAM to just handle that for you. I imagine if you started cloning that many computers through a network, here it's starting DHCP up, but you would really stress the system out. But doing just 10 or 15 the live distros probably will work. If you had it set up in a network and you wanted to do it by only do it with certain MAC addresses, you could do that. But we're doing all clients, and that's what most people do. We'll just pull a workstation and set up a live distro and use it for cloning. That's what I've read, and the live distro works really well for that. And I think I've mentioned that before. So again, if you were wanting to do it, so like we've got if we had like 100 gig partition and we were trying to push it through a 30 gig hard drive, you could go into this advanced options and click some settings. There are lots of other tutorials out there that cover that, so I'm not going to go over for it. We're going to do just basic things in this tutorial. So beginner's mode. So we want to do a full disk restore. We don't want to do part of this. We want to push the whole image, the 30 gig partition, and the 30 gig virtual drive. It's got the 30 gig partition and the 100 gig partition, or the 100 megabyte partition. I'm sorry. We want to push that the whole to the other computer. So reboot. So last time I said shut down. This time we'll push the image and we'll reboot. And then what we will do is we'll go ahead and start the sysprept image, and I'll show you what that is, and then I'll show you how to increase the hard drive size. So we'll reboot. We'll set the client to reboot when it's done pushing the image. And this is the image we made. So we're gonna click that. There's a couple different options here. The multicast, I guess, is when you want to do a lot of different computers. And I think if you have a managed switch, it will sometimes stop the packets. The unicast, I think, is supposed to be a little better, but it's not quite as fast. I'm not 100% sure what the differences are, but there there are lots of documents out there covering what the differences are, but I think multicast will work. And I want to say that I read something about multicast not working from the live distro, but it lets me select it, so that really wasn't clear. But you could go to the website, and I'll link it in the show notes if anybody's interested, or the note section. But we're just going to do multicast for now. And this is how long, basically, how many clients, the wait time. So basically, when they log on, they'll have a menu, mem test, don't run this, or clone this program. So that's just how many seconds that's going to wait before it just defaults on to start imaging. It's already set to 100. We want it to just, I'm going to select it, but say for you wanted to, you had a script and you had all the settings already configured, then you could put 15 seconds, and so you could just turn the computer on, go walk away, and it would, in 15 seconds, then it would go ahead and start imaging. But you would have to have it scripted, because it'll ask you, are you sure you want to clone the hard drive? But if you wrote a script file, you could just go on past that, and then it would start pushing, it would start loading the clonezilla software, and just go ahead and start in 15 seconds. So that's what I'm going to leave it at. So basically, this is just a warning saying that you can put your MAC addresses in this config file, and it won't, if they're in here, it won't it won't clone them if they're in if the MAC addresses are in there. But most people aren't really gonna worry about that. I talked to one guy, and he said that when he did it, he just used a switch, and he just had clonezilla do DHCP. That way he wouldn't worry about other people accidentally turning on the computer. And very seldom have I seen a computer default to boot on LAN, but it happens. Somebody hits a key, and next thing you know, they've cloned their computer on accident. So we want the bridged adapter, and then we want to go in here and we want to turn on network boot, and we want that to be our first priority. So we're just going to click that, and we're going to start the process up of booting. So we're going to, hopefully this will broadcast and it won't give me any problems. Yeah, it came right up. And so again, we entered 15 seconds. If I walked away for whatever reason, as soon as 15 seconds were up, it would just automatically go ahead and start cloning. But it will stop once it gets to the prompt, unless you write a script file. Mem test isn't working, but you could put it in there, and that's nice. If you're having problems with the system. And I think there's even another one where you can do like a 1 or 3-0 pass to wipe the hard drive, which would be nice to implement. But for right now, we're just going to clone the hard drive. So this is going to start up just like before. It's the exact opposite from restoring. From copying. Now we're just restoring, and once it starts, I'll stop it, because it'll take 6 or 7 minutes, and there's no point in watching it. It's going to do the same thing as it did before, just the exact opposite. So it'll do the 100 meg partition, and then it'll do the 30 gig partition, and then once it's done and we boot up, we'll enter some stuff in, and then we'll do a couple corrections, and then we'll resize the partition to the full 80 gig. So I'm just going to go ahead and stop it here. It's going to restore. Typically, I've seen speeds it takes a little second to get started, but typically I think on a with about a 7 gig image on 100 megabit network, it takes 7 or 8 minutes, and I think on a gig network, I think it was at like 4 minutes. Not a huge difference. And I imagine on a dedicated install, it would probably be even less than that. But these old computers, some of them have a gig net card in them, but they're only going to go so fast. So I'm going to stop it here, and then I will restart it back up once I get the prompt for Windows. And so this has been sysprepped and cloned, and it's a lot like a normal Windows install, except it's all your, if you have a domain on the computer, you can put that in, all the updates. I mean, it's pretty much you answer a few questions like you would on a normal setup, and you're ready for deployment. So sysprep was, it's a pretty good thing that they offer. It's my understanding that during Windows XP and you had to go and you would have like different versions. You had different hardware layers, and they would load different kernels. If you had a dual core, you would have to load a single core. You would have a hyper threaded CPU. You would have to load different hardware layers for that. But I guess with Vista and up, sysprep eliminated that, and so it'll pretty well detect what you have and install it. It's my understanding. So that's really nice, because what that does is, if you have a 64-bit OS, with the 4 gigs of RAM, it'll you're running a 64-bit sysprep version, then you can do that. But if you don't, then you've got pretty much a universal installer, and it'll handle HAL for you and some other stuff. And I think you can even get more advanced. You can add, like, if you've got a bunch of drivers that isn't native to the Windows right when you install it, you can add that, and that's some more advanced stuff that I haven't really gotten into yet. So, but this is pretty well supposed to be, will work on most processors, regardless of the hardware layer, and it'll load the kernel like you would during a fresh install, according to the architecture of your CPU. So that's nice. That it does that. I couldn't imagine having to sit there and figure out what HAL layer you need, what kernel you need to load, and you can do it in like the control panel. There's a button you can press and you can change it. But this is much nicer. It's a lot more animated. And we've already added a user in here, so this will create a duplicate user. But what's nice in this case is we could say, we've got a client. His name is, we'll call him John Doe. So we'll call him John Doe for whatever reason. So we actually have had created 2 user accounts. That's just the way it is. I mean, you're going to end up removing one. You need a user account to. I mean, you need a user account to create this. And I think you can do some scripting to take it out. Here you can activate your product key. We're not doing this just for demonstration purposes, but like, say for example, in this particular environment, we've cloned the computer, we put the RAM in, and we've already wiped the hard drive. We could actually put the product key in here, and then enter the person's name, register it to them, and so, it would be it would be activated and ready to go. So, but for now, we're going to skip that. And you're just agreeing that, hey, this has service pack on here, and you're agreeing to the EULA. We want it's always good to have your updates automatically installed. I know some admin people don't like it. They like to manually do their updates because there might be a patch that breaks something, and then they have to roll it back. So some people do their patch manually. These are just going out as client computers. So we want to automatically deploy the patches in case there's any zero-day exploits or vulnerabilities or anything. The times pretty much already. It's going to have the time zone in it already. You could change it. If you're taking the computer somewhere else. We're going to be on a home network, and I think that's pretty much it. And so we're just going to go into this, and it'll have all the applications before we sysprepped it. If you did register the computer and you sysprepped it, it'll take that out. Because that they won't let you do that for anti-piracy reasons. If you run sysprep, they're not. Well, unless you're using an OEM key, then you can sysprep that. But normal things, it strips that out there, so you have to re-register the computer. I never registered this to begin with, so that's not an issue. But there is a way to do it with OEM keys. If you say you bought a bunch of computers and you were deploying, you were downgrading from like 8 or 8.1, then you could use like a volume license, and that's more of a sysadmin thing. I'm not doing that. I'm just doing this to try to speed up productivity, because going from 3 hours to install something to 30 minutes start and finish, to shave some time off for just the sake of effectiveness. I'll let it go for here for another second, but if it takes too long, I'll go ahead and pause it. But as you can see, there was pretty much just like you were doing a fresh install, but you can go through, and like I said, you can script that out to be automated. I like it because in this case, like I said, we want to register the computer because it's getting ready to go out of the door, and we would have to go through all this and anyway. So we can just, we can ideally we can set this up, and this can just look over and make sure all the drivers are installed, and this can be ready to go out the door if this was an actual machine. So, for that particular purpose, it works fine. And I'm just going to pause the video because it will take a couple seconds as it's preparing, Windows. Okay, it didn't take too long. We have our two users here. One we created during the first time I installed it, and John Doe. We'll most likely put the client's name in, hopefully, or that can just be a placeholder. And we're going to go in, and I'll just delete the other profile. And then so the next step, what we need to do here is we need to go ahead and increase the partition from 30 gigs to an 80 gig. Because if you don't, then the person just has 50 gigs of hard drive space that they're not going to use. So you want to go ahead and increase the partition. That way the person can get their full drive. And you could probably do with like a 20 gig partition. I like 30 gigs. I think that's a good medium when you create it, because with that, if you have Office or some other programs that you need to put on there, that gives you plenty of space. It's not too much. It's not too little. It's a good in between. You could probably shave it down to like 25 gigs, but I think 30 is good. And like I say, that you probably shouldn't be installing Windows 7 on less than a 40 gig hard drive. If you are, I'm not really sure. I don't think that would be effective, but you know, to each their own. So it's preparing the desktop just a lot like you would when you're doing a fresh install, but it's a little different. And like I said, with the advantage of everything being ready for you. You know, is this truly a universal copy? From what I've read, you know, it should. It might hang up on different systems. You might have to go back and make some changes. You know, it's really hard to say because everything's different. But I think, you know, I've put this on about 8 different systems. They've all been, you know, P4s and dual cores, and it's worked. You know, because it's installed the hardware layering. It's loaded the kernel and the right kernel and the right version of Windows. The hardware layering, I believe that's called. Again, if it takes too much longer, I'll just go ahead and pause the video, but it shouldn't. So it restarted. It, you know, finished its installation process, and it's restarting. So hopefully, if I did everything right, I won't get any error messages. And I will warn you, if you sysprep it and then you accidentally let the computer start back up and you shut it down because you're trying to clone it, it will, when it comes up, it will tell you, you know, the computer didn't get shut down right. Because like if I'm here and I shut it down, it'll say that it wasn't properly shut down right. So you do not want to turn the computer on unless you're absolutely ready to sysprep it. Because if you don't, then you'll get a little message and you got to say start this normally. So just be sure when you sysprep it, you want to shut it down and not start it back up until you're actually ready to clone it. Because when it starts up the next time, it will actually go into, like, you know, you're ready to deploy it. That's why when you run the sysprep, I like to tell it to shut down. If you tell it to restart, then it might restart and start actually, you know, setting up Windows again. So I like the shutdown option. That way you can go into your BIOS and kind of figure out what you need to do, what settings you need to make to have it boot from the LAN. You know, and it is called PBX boot. There is another kind of boot. I think that's an older boot protocol. I think most computers will support the PBX and the other one, but I think the newer ones just do PBX. But there was another kind of another boot protocol. I don't know too much about it, but the PBX I think is the standard. You know, kind of one out between the two. I think it's an Intel standard. I'm not 100% sure on that, but you know, we've deployed sysprep, and you know, we've got all our applications that we put on, and I do notice if you use Security Essentials, you kind of got to go and make sure it starts up, because even if you install it, it doesn't always. And a lot of times you can just, let's see if we can find it on here. You can just click it and it'll, yeah, I mean, when you sysprep it kind of turns it off, and you can just go back in here and kind of, you know, you agree to the EULA, and it will enable it. You got to kind of set it up a little bit. It's not a huge deal, and I think with the exception of that, everything else should be there. So with the exception of the antivirus, everything else should be pretty much working. We'll just I'll hit cancel because I'm not trying to update or anything. So yeah, I mean, you know, all the programs we've installed should be ready to go. We'll go to Control Panel here and see there should just be two optional updates, and just to kind of show you that it did update, and when it comes back, it just should show two two optional updates, and one's like Bing and something else. There's no critical. If there was, like, if for whatever reason there got a a patch, a 0-day vulnerability or something like that, then we could download that now. But I think once a month, once every 2 months is probably good to build it. And I know from what I've read, the sysprep utility, I think you can run it 3 times before it won't work anymore. And then you've got the product activation. I think you can set that 2 different times. But you probably, you can only going to push it off so much, and then you're going to have to probably just rebuild the image, rebuild the instance, and it's not that big of a deal. Start to finish, you're probably an hour and a half, but it shouldn't be a huge deal. And while that's checking for updates, I'm going to go and I'm going to show you how to increase the partition. Because you look here, we've only got a 30 gig partition, even though it's an 80 gig drive, virtually. I'll just check and see if that's and that's scanning. I don't want that to do that. Let's go back in here and let's make sure it's still checking for the updates. So from here we can go to the administration tools. Then you want to go to computer management, and it's taking a second. I shouldn't have probably started the update process, but whatever. It's only set to have like a gig of RAM and one CPU. So, like I say, it's not the fastest. But it's a good representation. Obviously it's going to be faster because I have a modern computer than a P4. But 1 gig of RAM in a virtual environment, it's going to slow it down some. And so you can see we've got 50 gigs here that's not allocated. So what we're going to do is we're going to extend the volume, and you basically just click next. If you're not sure what to do, just don't click anything. You can adjust it if you want to make multiple partitions, but it's set by default to use all the space on the hard drive. And you just click next, and it's going to go ahead and just since it is the partition set up, and it fills it up. And so now we can go in here and we can just look at our partition, and we can see that the partition's been filled up. And so, well, there we go. Had to refresh it. So we're using the full 80 gigs now instead of the 30, and that's just an important step, because if you forget, the person's not going to get their full hard drive space. And I think it was at like 16 or 17 gigs. So you've got 15 gigs free, but that's not really a lot of space to do anything with. And so 30 gigs is a happy medium. You should probably not be installing it less than 40 gig, a 40 gig hard drive, because you have to have room for the page files, the swap files, and other stuff. So I did notice that the settings that I made, it kept the settings that when I went in here to the systems and did the performance and turned off all the eye candy, it looked like it turned that back on. So just for best practices, I'll go in here and I'll turn that stuff back on. And hey, if you've got a lot of RAM and you've got a good GPU, you can turn it on. You have Arrow, and that's probably not going to be on, and you can look that up. And that's just if you have hardware acceleration, then you can do like your windows are like see-through, and it's just decorative. That's all. And you will have to go through here and look at your drivers and do a little work there, like you would on any install. But other than that, it's pretty much good to to go out the door, you know, and you'll have to register within 30 days. Obviously, I built this like last week, and there's a command you can do to reset this, but you can only do it a couple times, and then it'll just stop working. Anyway, I'll go in here, and I didn't mean to do that there. Advanced system settings, and then we'll go in here and we'll. I think it's kind of still must be looking for the updates. Advanced visual performance, and we'll just set everything for best performance. Like I said, it keeps most of the settings, but it does reset everything back, the hardware ID and everything. But if you've got a good system, you could probably leave most of that stuff on. It's not going to hurt anything. But other than that, I think that pretty much covers it. And we're just going to go here and look at the updates, and then there are no more important updates. There are just 3 optional updates, and those are pretty much what we had before. The security definitions, you know, it probably saw that was a new, you know, pretty much just like a new install. So even though we got the definitions, it's just flagging them to be downloaded again. And that actually the definitions will be downloaded automatically, I believe. So if you update it, you can look and actually see that it was updated. So the definitions are new, but according to the thing, it installed it like a new antivirus. So that's why it thinks there's a new antivirus Security Essentials on there. Thank you for taking the time to look at this with me, and it's been a journey and a learning experience. I'm not saying this is the best way or the right way, but it's worked for me. There are a lot of other tutorials out there. People will do things different, you know, and this is just what I did and the people I'm helping. And thank you. You have a good day.